Good evening, Maraba. Welcome. Thank you, audience. Thanks for joining us in this another webinar from the PMI UAE chapter. I welcome you from the events team side to join us for this meaningful session for next 1 hour. Of course, with one of our esteemed speaker, which we have been trying to get on board with us. And I'm quite happy to understand that since we are in the last month of the year, still we are getting the good amount of registrations around our webinars, and we are going to close the year in the full-fledged big fashion because we are making, I think, a lot of new records in the PMIUA chapter in the form of new audience who are joining us and the some participations. And that's really lovely. And thank you so much for the people who have been repeatedly been on our side. And thank you so much for your support and your help and your presence throughout in these webinars. The people who are joining us first time, welcome. Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon from wherever you're joining. So my name is Anchal, and I'm your PMI UAE chapter event team host for this webinar tonight. Of course, I've been joined with a couple of more people, which I will be introducing you throughout the session now. But let's leave some amount of time for the other peoples to come in through and join us in this journey. So just hold on your breath and give us other people to join us. Meanwhile, you can use the chat to introduce yourself and your location and your field in which you are working in, particularly sector, if you are coming from construction, coming from the project management, coming from any other field, definitely introduce your sector as well. That will allow the other people to get to know you better. So just allow a couple of more minutes. We are seeing that 70 people have joined already. We are expecting few more to join us in next 2 or 3 minutes, and then we will officially launch the webinar tonight. I believe the chat is working fine. Yeah, I started seeing the messages around that. Uh, Good evening again from the people who are joining in the region. And if there's somebody else outside the Asia, then good afternoon, good morning to them as well. Okay, so we have 3 minutes just over. Let's make 2 more minutes and then we will go and take a deeper dive into that. Meanwhile, the people who have joined us so far, of course, you are aware about it. So today's discussion, what we are going to do and to introduce ourselves with the topic of career networking and adding values through relationship. So this is more of a kind of soft topic, but it's very meaningful, very important. We all understand that none of us can really survive and thrive in absence of the real value addition, and these value addition will really get materialized with our relationship around the colleagues, around the peers, around our the people whom we work as partners, and also the contractors. So all these people work throughout with us to create add and meaningful values around us. So we are going to learn today that how this particular topic is really important and is important for us to really understand and take a deeper dive about learning a couple of things. Of course, one would be to build a meaningful network, which we all try to do as a part of chapter as well at times. And is how is it important and essential to grow your career? But of course, the successful networking goes beyond collecting the contacts, right? It's just about creating the lasting and value-driven relationships, identifying and connect with the influential professionals in your industry and outside your industry at times, adding the really genuine value to relationships and creating the foundation of these relationships with the meaning of trust and support and help when the person needs you. Okay, cultivating this important and element of networking that grows with you along with your career, that really balances off your professional approach, that how do you ask for authentic contribution to your career and to your profession as well. So with all that, whether you're looking to advance yourself in the current role or exploring a new opportunities, this particular webinar topic will equip you with the skills to turn these connections into enduring career assets. So this is all as we're going to talk about today. We have seen that how many 82 have joined us so far. And I see quite a few people are quite regular ones with us, some familiar names. Welcome to all of you again. Uh, with me, I have Joyce, I have Parvez, who has joined with me at the back of the cameras, and then they have been helping me to arrange this webinar with all of you. Of course, with our esteemed guest, who is there with us, Saur. Before I take a deep dive into the speaker and his bio a bit to explain you, I would like to explain some housekeeping notes. If the people are joining it first time, what should expect from this webinar of an hour? We would follow a set agenda today, in which we are going to have a brief introduction of our PMI UAE chapter, in which I will be showcasing you a couple of slides to skim you through around that what is this PMI about, how the PMI UAE chapter is being looking in terms of vision and mission, and what we do, and then how we add the value around that. Of course, we will have a short time for the Q&A. Once Mr. Drew will finish up his content, we will try to give all the answers in the form of meaningful values to you in the best possible time accommodates to us, to both of us in the time frame. But before we go into the Q&As, I would definitely encourage you to post your thoughts on the chat section, as you have been doing, and interact with the other people. To even if you can post your comments also, okay, we welcome the comments and thought sharing, okay, to make it webinar much more engaging one. With regards to your questions, please feel free to put them into Q&A section rather than the chat section, to discriminate and distinguish easily from the chat and getting lost around that. So let's begin with the quick introduction of the PMI UAE chapter from my side, and then we will directly jump into the introduction of Mr. Drew. So I'm sharing my screen quickly here. Okay. Okay, it is all set. So, as I was mentioning, PMI, the Project Management Institute, is of course one of the renowned institute which has been founded in 1969 by the group of project managers, of course, in the back in US. And 50 years later now, PMI has its own charm and its own reputation around the world as a source and resource of all the things which are associated with project management as a field. One of the largest professional association in this world that offers training, accreditation, and then community services as well. We issue global recognized standards and credentials around project management standards and its related concerned fields. We also are engaged with sponsors and publish research, thought leadership, and knowledge content. UAE chapter is one of the chapter in the Middle East, which is working very closely with the vision of the PMI itself. Chapter has its own vision to empower and influence individuals with the innovative project economy principles to turn ideas into reality. To make this vision statement work, the associated mission statement goes like that: to disrupt and create a value driven opportunities to our chapter members and partners to become agile, innovative, productive in the platform for the growth of project economy. The chapter itself is a quite vibrant chapter. It is being run 100% by the volunteers. We have crossed 4,000 mark, by the way, for the active chapter members, which is a huge achievement for the chapter, and we are quite proud of that. Ranked among the top 5 chapters in the EMA region, we focus on the leading industry and trends, and we serve as an aspiring community of project managers within the region and the PMI certified holders in the field of project program professionals that really seeking the capabilities and believing in the importance of our profession and to how to enhance that out. We depend on you in order to make our chapter activities as interactive and invigorating as possible through our all the engaging investments in the form of webinars, in the form of events, in the form of workshops, or any other offline things which we interact with the chapter members. Here is the chapter board looking like. So it's being led by Mr. Adil Sultan as a president, and then rest of the board members, directors are also associated with the chapter activities in their respective functions. We have the membership benefits. We have the membership benefits in the form of 4 pillars. One is networking, learning and knowledge sharing, career growth prospects, and events. So this particular webinar is the part of the event series, which we do as a part of diversified webinars. Some initiatives which the chapter has initiated from their side is, of course, Members Corner and Spotlight. So make use of these opportunities to share your thoughts and expertise in the wider project management fraternity. You can write to the newsletters at pmiuae.org. There's a lot of other things which keep happening around partnerships, around engagements. Definitely, you all feel free to go to the pmiua.org website to learn about it. All the membership related things, you can go to the membership at pmiua.org, and volunteering related things to volunteering.pmiua.org. And the general inquiries can go to info@pmiua.org. Meanwhile, a lot of things which we publish, and even these webinars are be the part of the PMI chapter YouTube channel, which definitely engages all of you to go through this webinar recording as it is in this chapter YouTube channel if you want to go ahead. With that, I will take a bit of pause there and I will introduce our bio of our speaker today, who is Mr. Drew Saur, who's a former tech CEO and executive career coach with more than 20 years of experience. And he's trying to help all the tech leaders advancing to director, VP, and C-level roles. With a proven track record of driving success for 100 plus executives, Drew combines his expertise in strategic leadership, operations, risk management, to provide actionable guidance for the professionals like these who can make themselves ready and make an impact on the executive position. His unique coaching approaches leverage real world insights and personalized system designed to help tech leaders create and communicate their unique value proposition and mastering the career transitions and leading confidently from their day one from their jobs. So with that in mind, without any further ado, I would like to hand over the stage to Mr. Drew Saur, who will take us through his content and valuable insights around how to make this value-added relationship make work. Over to you, Mr. Drew.
Great. Thank you, Anshul. And thank you for everybody for having me today. I'm excited to be here. I saw just coming in the chat, we have people from all over the world. So it's morning for me, but good morning, afternoon, evening to everybody. And as Anshul mentioned, what we're going to talk about today, and I will share my screen here, is career networking in the context of, subtitle of adding value through relationships. So I just want to let that share for a second. I think it should be good. Just thumbs up. Okay. So as Anshul mentioned, my quick background, right? I spent my career in the technology side. I started as an engineer, worked my way through. I started with Accenture doing consulting, worked my way up in my own career until I was, CEO of a company in New York. I did pass through sort of the PMI and PMO world. I actually ran the PMO for a number of years. And as I sort of grew my responsibilities, it was one of the things that I did. So I have a special place in my heart for all of you guys because it is a critically important role, sometimes underappreciated, but obviously very critical to everything that gets done in most companies in the world. So kudos to you for being here and doing what you do. And what we're going to do today is go through a couple of quick things. This is my bio. We already went through that. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Love to connect to new people, so do that. But in terms of the talk today, I'm going to take you through three sort of pieces of the puzzle. And what I'm going to do is kind of zoom out. So we are going to talk about career networking. We are going to talk about the mechanics of how you do this and why you do this. But I always like to start at the top. And the first question is around clarity. And this is the idea of, what is it that you want to do with your career, right? And you need to understand where you're trying to go. And not that we're going to do that exercise today, but what I want to do is take you through a couple of just high-level ideas around how to think about your career, how to think about career growth, and a couple of insights into how career growth actually works. Because that'll sort of set the stage for the second piece, which is the context. The context is, what is networking? Most of you have done networking, you're aware of networking. I'm going to give you what might be a slightly newer version or different version of career networking. And this is something that I sort of do with my clients in terms of how do you network, add value, and then use that as part of your overall objective for growing your career, right? Everybody has a career and you should focus on how to make a bigger impact, which is ultimately what career growth is about. And then the third part is the connection. And that's probably a little more of what you're expecting to hear today, which is some of the tools and tactics you can use to actually go out and network. Like literally, how do you do it? What do you talk about? How do you follow up? Those kind of things as we go through. Okay, so we're going to start with the first piece, clarity, right? So again, this is the zoom out. This is the idea of, okay, what are careers? What is career growth all about? And it starts with this idea here, which is the foundational idea that I'll kind of mention a couple of times, which is when you think about an organization, they hire people because they are not getting the results with the resources they have, right? And this idea of it's not about you and what you can do, it's about them and the problem that they have, right? So the scenario is if I have a company and everything is going well, everything's going perfectly, why would I hire more staff? I wouldn't. I'm making plenty of money, everything's going well. I hire staff when I want something. Sometimes that is to fix something bad, right? We're having quality issues, everything's delayed, can't get anything done. Or it could be a positive issue of I see a market opportunity and I want to take advantage of it. But it always starts with a problem. So when you think about your career, you want to start to think about not what can you do, but rather what are the problems that you can solve, right? So to get any position, the second idea is you have to answer three questions, right? The first question is, what do they want? Why does this company need something? Two, you have to understand why are they not getting it? And once again, there are many different reasons why they might be getting it. It could be a skill set gap. It could be a relationship gap. It could be a process or market gap. And each of those is slightly different. And then three, which is the question for you, is how can you resolve that problem, right? And we'll talk about this as we kind of go through this. But again, macro career, it's not about you, it's about them. And ultimately, what is that special thing that you bring to the table? Because even in the program and project management world, right, the jobs that you eventually want will also have a bunch of people who are skilled in the program project management world who also want that job. So the question is, what do you do that's special? How do you differentiate yourself, right? And these are just some ideas that I want to start out with so you can frame career networking in the context of what do I do that's special? Where do I want to go? What's the impact that I want to make, right? So here's just some background in terms of those three questions. The other kind of secret is that every level has different expectations. And these are just some very core ideas that I want to sort of share with you today. So the first one being, it is not a bigger job, it is a different job. Every level of the hierarchy is actually a different job. So if you are a project analyst, and then a project manager, and then program manager, and then you're head of PMO, and then maybe you're an officer, or whatever it is, as if you've gone through a few of those, you know this, but you may not have thought about it this way. Each level is a different job with different expectations and different responsibilities. And so you can see on this task, on this table here, the titles are just generic, right? I come from the technology, financial service background, so they tend to be a little more focused on that. But conceptually, you have the analyst, right? A basic analyst is supposed to deliver tasks. That's the job, and that's how you're measured on them. And you typically have this narrow subject matter expertise. When you move up to manager, and in this case, manager means managing other people, getting other people to execute, right? You start being judged on yourself, then you are judged on, can you get other people to deliver? And if you've been a project manager, which a lot of you are, you know that that's a challenge and that's a skill set in and of itself. But you still tend to have a sort of narrow subject matter expertise. You're focused on one project or one domain. Then you come to director. This could be the equivalent of maybe a program manager or something like that, where you're now doing large scale execution, right? And you'll notice there, business relationships become much more important because now you are not necessarily focused down. You are now focused at least sideways, if not up. And your job, one of the most important things of your job is your relationships with the business partners, who is sponsoring the project, who are the other contractors on there, who are the division leaders who are engaged in this project, right? You sort of add that business relationship. And then there's the kind of a hard line as you start to get more into the executive levels, but the concept keeps going at that sort of VP. So if you ran a PMO, right, which would be typically at least an officer position, now your strategic thinking is critical because you're not in charge of executing. You are, but that's not it. You are now also in charge of where should we go? What projects should we invest in? What's the intake process, right? The portfolio management aspects of it. You're supposed to know more about the business at this point because it's not just, can you run a project, classic PMI style? It's, do you understand the business that we're in? because you're now partnering with more senior people. And then as you continue up, SVPs, those kind of people tend to worry about, P&Ls, so the profit and loss of the business. And eventually, if you're in the C-suite, it's all about vision and growth and clients and markets and stuff like that. But the idea here is whatever job you have, being really good at that job doesn't necessarily mean you're ready for the next one. It is a different job. And so you want to think about that in the context of careers, in the context of networking that we'll talk about, is one of your jobs is to figure out what that next job is that you want. Why is it different? What are those skills? And then you can figure out how to get them. Okay. And again, these are all just the foundational ideas. The next one is that career growth requires you to become a partner. And some of you have already seen this, because I know everybody's kind of at different levels right now. But again, a high level concept, what is your relationship, right? We're going to talk about networking, we're going to talk about relationships. So what kind of relationship do you have? And to keep it simple, I like to think of it as two. There's a service provider relationship and there's a partner relationship. The service provider is, I get instructions on what to do, I get a direction, and then I go do it. Hey, Drew, can you take care of this project? Hey, Drew, can you take care of this issue? Hey, Drew, I want to put you in charge of this thing. It can be a really big thing that I am given, but I am given the thing and asked to do it because I'm so good at getting stuff done. That is a service provider relationship. A partner relationship is the, hey, Drew, I'm thinking we should do this kind of project. What do you think? Help me shape the definition of this project. Help me shape what we're going to do. I want to hear your ideas, not about execution, but about what we are doing, right? That is moving into the partner world. And so again, I just give you these frames because wherever you are in the beginning, it tends to always be service provider. At the senior executive levels, it's partnerships. And so as you journey through, right, you are starting to try to shift. You're starting to try to build relationships that are more partner relationships with senior individuals as opposed to service provider. And again, you can have access to this material, so you can kind of read the details in terms of what it is. But I just wanted to share that macro level concept, right? How do you move yourself up to try to be a partner, which comes back to the networking stuff that we'll talk about in a minute. The next idea is just to kind of give you a visual. So how does this work? And again, as I said, my focus is on career growth for people. So that's going to be the bent of this entire conversation. You are this gold dot right here. So this is you. In whatever organization you're in, this is you and this is your project team or whatever the case may be. When it comes to a career, the question is, how many relationships can you build with people that you do not need to relate to, right? So if you look at this diagram, the people in gray work for you. You obviously deal with them all the time. The person in gray on the left is somebody who is your peer. You probably work with them. And then there's like your boss, right? That's the light green, right? And so gray are people that, you deal with all the time. The green tend to be slightly more distance. It's kind of 1 degree away. And they're green because those are good relationships to have. But when you think about career growth and networking, the really important ones are the dark green, meaning how far away from you are these people? Because if people expect you to have a relationship, that's great and you need those, but it doesn't kind of count as much because it's unexpected, right? Yeah, of course you're going to work with those people. That's what I expect you to do. If you start to build relationships in a wider setting, then you start to build a network that can then help you, right? So this is just a quick visual to say, as you think about networking, it's up and out. How far up can you go and how far out can you go to build new relationships? And you can practice obviously in a group like this one where you can definitely go wide, right? Because I know there are a bunch of people from all over the world in here, so you can absolutely go wide. And then within your company, and we'll talk about this later, but even in cold networking, you start to go up. Because if you want those roles, you want to start to eventually be partners with those people, right? That's what we're trying to do here. And just to kind of sum it up, so this is just the first context part. I just want to lay this as the foundation because it'll help the rest of the presentation as we go forward. The last piece is your career success is based on 2 factors, results and relationships. And you need both of them, right? Results are, do you get stuff done? Did you deliver that project on time, on budget, with high quality, all the classic stuff, right? The relationships are, who are the people that you relate to and talk to and strategize with across the organization. And what you realize is if you kind of zoom out in terms of the overall career ladder, the mix between the two shifts, right? So if you are, again, starting out, this is your first job, you're an analyst, about 90% of your success will be driven based on your results, right? You're supposed to run a project, basically you have to run a project. If the project ran well, people say you did a great job. Perfect, right? But as you move up, right, and these are just generic titles, but senior analyst, manager, executive, as you kind of move to the middle, so if you're a senior project manager or a program manager, it's probably 50-50, right? It is, you have to get the job done, you have to deliver the project, but you also have to have relationships with all the key stakeholders. And your management will be judging you kind of 50-50. Like, did you get it done? And what do people think of you? And then if you keep going, right, if you run a PMO or you do something like that, it starts to shift even more so, where the results become less and less important. You can't mess it up. So I'm not saying you take your eye off the ball. You still have to execute, but that becomes an expectation. I expect you to run a group. I expect you to be able to run a portfolio of projects that are done on time, on budget, et cetera. What I really care about is, do people like working with you? Are you a partner? Are you a strategic, engager across the executive team? Right. So as you move up, depending on how far you want to go up, relationships become more and more important. So that's kind of the foundation, right? So career growth, career targets, it's about what problem do you solve? It's not about you, it's about them. You have to figure out where you fit. And then you want to understand how you shift yourself into becoming somebody different, because it is a different job. So you need to show different skills and build different relationships. So that's kind of the foundation. So that hopefully provides you a little bit of clarity. That's why that section is called that, to what am I trying to do here? So now we're going to shift to context, which is kind of the core ideas of networking. And I'm going to go through basic networking, which is probably familiar to you. And then I'm going to show you what I consider a slightly better version in the context of your career. Okay, so this is networking. As you can look it up, this is the classic definition of networking: a supportive system of sharing information and services among individuals and groups having a common interest. The PMI, all of you here today, this is a classic example of the network, right? You have people who have a common interest and they want to share. And so if you've learned about networking before, it probably looks like this. Classic kind of 5 steps. Okay, I want to network within the PMI. What do I do? So first, why do I want to network? Okay, well, I want to meet other professionals. I want to understand what's going on, right? You target, who do I need to meet with? Who do I need to network with? This would be, okay, I'm going to network with the members. How are you going to reach them? And then this is just literally the mechanics of, is there a directory? Are you going to do this on the call? Or are you just going to reach out and email them? And you have to think about what you're going to talk about. And then you have a good conversation. And then hopefully you'll continue the relationship going forward, right? That's the classic way to think about networking. And it's great for meeting new people, right? This talk is about how do you focus on career networking. So I'm going to give you a slightly different definition. So career networking in my world is a consistent strategy of adding value to others that may or may not, and this is very important, help you advance your career, right? So the focus is not on making connections. The focus becomes on adding value. And it may or may not help your career. So the sort of catch-22 of this is, if you do it because you want something, it doesn't work nearly as well. You have to do it because you legitimately want to add value to other people, right? And so this is kind of networking in the career context, is a consistent strategy of adding value to other people. Because here's what we're trying to do. We are trying to move from a stranger up this ladder. So stranger, I've never met you before. Would I help you? And the answer is, well, I don't know. Like, if I'm a nice person, maybe I will. But then you become an acquaintance, eventually an associate, then a collaborator, and eventually a trusted partner, right? And your career is a function of how many people do you have that consider you a trusted partner, right? And so from a career networking perspective, you are trying to move up this ladder. And here are kind of 4 simple ways to think about how to do that, right? So one is engagement. Be genuinely interested. People can tell when you're fake, right? So step 1 is actually be interested in other people, right? Other people are fascinating. They all have an interesting story. They all have something to add to the world. Be genuinely interested. And if you can do that, that's the biggest lever that you can pull. Number 2, support. How can you help them, right? It's not about you. It's about them. So the question is, how can you support them to achieve what they are trying to do? Number three, be reliable, right? And again, this is all about trusted partner. One of the fundamental aspects of trust is I keep my word. So if you make a promise, hey, I'll follow up with you next week, follow up with them next week, right? Check in consistently. Oh yeah, it's nice. Drew checks out, checks in every couple months. He always reaches out to see how I'm doing. Excuse me. And the more reliable is a way to kind of move yourself up the ladder. And lastly is just be empathetic, right? Help them understand their challenges and goals and just be, a friend, right? I mean, that's ultimately what this is trying to do, is basically figure out how do you do that in the context of your career. So this is what we're trying to do. And I tend to think about this as a bank account model. And this is probably one of the simplest and most important things for you to think about in terms of relationships. It's one of my favorites. And it's this idea of everybody has a bank account. And so you can think about a relationship as if it were a bank account with a balance, right? And so you want to think about, if I never met you and we just met and I said, hey, Drew, can I borrow your car? Right? Or can I have something? Can you give me money? Whatever it is. Would I do that? If I just met you and you came up on the street and asked for my card, no, right? Why? Because I have a zero balance and you are asking for a withdrawal, right? So I don't want to go negative. I don't know you. I'm not going to give you my car keys, right? And if you use that context, what you are trying to do is build up balances with everybody, right? And then you can, once you have a balance, you can use that to ask for favors or help just as a normal relationship, right? And so how do you make a deposit, right? And this is particularly important when it's a new person, you don't know them, you're not necessarily working up with them. How can you add to the deposit? So simple way, knowledge and resource sharing. Do you have something that might be helpful to them? Provide valuable information. Hey, I thought this might be helpful because I saw you were working on this. Here is an article I found. Here's a nice video that explains it. I hope that helps. Little deposit, right? Support and assistance. Oh, I see you're working this. Do you need help, right? How can you just contribute something there? Just listening is often very useful because most people have something that they want to talk to other people about. Listening is deposit. Reliability and trustworthiness, similar to what I said on the last slide. But the idea is you want to make a bunch of deposits before you ask. And if your mindset is, how can I make more deposits to more people? It really builds your network and it happens to feel good, which is a great side effect of it, right? And the withdrawal is a favorite. So the graph here would show you something where, you are trying to build a balance, right? You're trying to help somebody. And then eventually you're like, hey, could you introduce me to somebody? That would be this kind of minor withdrawal, this kind of black line here. And every time you have a withdrawal, you want to make sure you then make another deposit, right? And then eventually you may have a big one. Hey, I saw this job. It's a company I'd love to work for. Can you put in a good word for me? Can you make a phone call? Can you help me achieve that role? That tends to be a big withdrawal, right? And so this balance just helps. It's true when you think about your friends and your family. Family has like an infinite balance, right? You can ask almost anything from your family and you kind of have an infinite balance and you're typically always contributing back because they're family. Like you're going to do stuff for them. But when it comes to these new people that you haven't met, the biggest mistake people make is they ask for a withdrawal before they made enough deposits, right? So they try to network with, the head of the PMO or the head of the product organization. And very quickly they're like, hey, can you do this for me? Right. And the withdrawal comes way too quickly because even in the way you ask, right? Hey, busy executive, I was hoping could you do this for me? Why would they do that for you? Have you made a deposit? Right? And the chances are if they might because they're nice people, but they very well might not. And so it's just a good frame, particularly when you're doing networking, when you're thinking of new people, ask yourself the question, have I made a deposit? If I have not made a deposit, why would they give me stuff? They might, but it's much easier if you go first. So that's this idea. And so when you put kind of back together, right, and this is kind of the core of networking, is why do you network gets replaced with what can I contribute, right? Because you have value, clearly. There are things that you offer. There's things that you have that can help other people. So you start with, what do I have to offer? Because the goal is to make as many deposits as possible. The more deposits you make, the bigger bank balance you have, the more you can use that without going negative to achieve what you want in your career. So what can I contribute? And then second, Who do you need to network with? That's an I-focused version of the world. Now you think from their perspective. Why would they want to connect with me? Hopefully it's because one of these things I have of value would be valuable to them, but there needs to be that match there, right? Okay, so now I know why they would want to connect with me. I have this thing of value. I find people who would basically find value in that. And then the third one is, why would they want to talk to you, right? You need to have and we'll talk about the tactics of this in a minute, but like you need to open the engagement in a way that they see that you have a value to offer them. Then as opposed to what are you going to talk about? What are you literally going to do to add the value? Are you going to have a conversation? Are you going to send them something? What are you going to do? And then the continuing relationship becomes, how do I continue to add value? Right. So this is kind of the 201 version of networking. And this is building the foundation for how you do this to grow your career. Okay. So that's the context, right? So we talked about the clarity. It's not about you, it's about them. Every opportunity is a problem to be solved. And your job is to figure out how you can put yourself in a position to solve that. The context is networking is about building these balances. Because if you see the opportunity and you want to achieve the opportunity, you want to look at all the tools at your disposal. If you have a great balance with a number of people and you have a very strong network, they'll be more than happy to help you achieve what you want. So now we'll kind of go into the third piece, which is the connection. And so this is the actual tactics of networking and how you go about it. Okay. Excuse me. So first thing when we get into the brass tacks of, okay, how do you network is there are two stages. And again, this is all sort of somewhat arbitrary, but I like to kind of keep things very simple to make sure that they are doable and there are choices that you can make. So networking should have a purpose. I'm going to go, there's an event, I'm going to go network. Great. In the context of your career, in the context of what you want, why are you going, right? You want to understand the why first. And there are two major stages here, as you can see. So stage one is information, right? You want to gather information, industries, markets, opportunities. This is the normal state for probably most of you, where you're like, hey, I'm in a good role. I like what I'm doing now. I want to do something in the future, but nothing urgent. I'm not actively going. Go find out things, right? Network with people who can give you insights into the job that you think you want, right? I'm in this job. I want that job someday. Well, go talk to somebody in that job and get a sense of what do they actually do all day? Because oftentimes what you think they do and what they actually do are two different things. So I always tell people, if you have a job you think you want, go talk to somebody in it. It's a really good way to figure out, is that actually what you want? So that's information, right? And then there's action. Action is when you've gathered enough information, you have an opportunity, you know what you are trying to do, and you want to find a way to move closer. You want them to do something for you. You are preparing to make a withdrawal, right? So you want to have a clear target and you want to have made enough deposits that you believe that that person will help you. Okay. So that's the stage. You have two different things, information and action. So how do you actually do it? So first up is easy mode, right? Easy mode is warm networking. And this involves contacts that are existing or have some warm connection. You have a mutual friend, you know them from a past relationship, and there is an existing context, which makes it much, much easier because they already have a general sense of who you are and what you do. So here is kind of a basic 5-step process that you can follow to do that. So one is you have to initiate the connection, right? And so I'll show you some examples in a minute in terms of literally how you can do that, but you want to reach out and connect. Two is personalized, right? Is it a generic outreach or is it personal? People like feeling important, right? It's just, we all do, right? It's the natural way we do. So if you may have gotten solicitations over time in your email or LinkedIn or other things. One of the first questions is, how generic is it? Is it, dear sir or madam, I see you are a PMI professional. Would you like to take our training? Right? That is very generic, right? If it's, hey, Anshal, I saw that last month you made a chip, you were in Dubai doing this PMI presentation. I really liked your intro. That was so great. I was wondering if we could connect and just follow up and talk about whatever, right? That is a much more personal, right? Which says that, okay, I watched this video, I saw Anshul's intro, and I'm like, oh, actually, I haven't talked to him in years. Let me go reach out to him. I made it personal and I showed that I put in some effort, right? So, and this is just a general thing for you is personalize every time, right? Why me? Why now? And what triggered it, right? Answer those questions by saying, oh, I was just thinking about our time back at the company and it's such a great time. And I saw you posted this thing on LinkedIn. So I thought I'd reach out, right? Personalize a connection. Number three, offer value, right? There should be some way that you can help them, right? Because if you call out of the blue and say, hey, we haven't talked for years. By the way, would you introduce me to somebody? It's very fast withdrawal, right? And people don't react well to that. So you want to offer value first. Then you have a soft CTA. So you ask for a meetup. Hey, do you have 15 minutes? I'd love to ask you some questions about this company that you're working at because I'm thinking about what I want to do next. So you have a soft CTA's call to action. If you haven't seen that, sorry, I like the acronym, but call to action. What do you want them to do? And then follow up, right? So connect in a personalized way, offer value, gently ask for them to meet or engage, and usually they will. And then once you do, make sure you follow up, close the loop, and be consistent to add that value. So that's kind of warm networking. Classic, relatively straightforward to do. So let's go to the hard mode is cold networking. And having worked with obviously many people at this point, this one is, it's like a superpower. I will just tell you that. Most people do not want to do this. They're just uncomfortable doing it. It is mentally hard, especially if you're, I mean, I come to the technology world. I'm a bit of an introvert. Most people that I work with tend to be introverts. Like it's really hard to do this. But if you can do it, it opens up an amazing opportunity. And it's actually not that hard. You just have to kind of grit your teeth and try it the first time. Because once you do, you'll kind of get it. Cold networking involves reaching out to people where there is zero existing connection, right? And you want to find a way to connect with them, right? So if you want to be this executive someday, can you just find a couple of those executives and reach out and talk to them? That's kind of the test of cold networking, right? It is mentally hard to do. It's not physically hard to do, but it is mentally hard to do, but it's the fastest way to grow. So here's just some guidance in terms of how do you actually target people for cold networking, right? So one, in your target role or industry, right? Why are you reaching out to them? The easiest way is finding somebody doing that thing that you want to do, right? I want to be you someday is a perfect opener to say, hey, you look really successful. You seem to have had a great career. I would love to do that. I'd love to get 15 minutes of your time just to ask some questions, understand how you did that, right? So if there's something aligned to where you're going, very helpful. If you can find a shared background, right? This is the connection. Sometimes there is no connection, but if you can find some sort of shared background, you went to the same school, you worked at the same company, even a previous company, there should be some background. In your case, oh, they were part of a PMI or they have a PMI certification or they used to run a program project management group. Find a connection that, again, helps. 1 to 2 levels above your target role. And the reason for this is because it is actually easier to reach out to an executive. Because a lot of times, especially in today's world where there's just a lot of layoffs and a lot of job change going on, if you reach out to somebody kind of directly above you, right, then they may just think that you're trying to get a job, right? If you go a couple levels above your target role, there's much less chance that they think you're coming to them for a job because you're going to a C-suite person or you're going to somebody at the highest levels. So it is actually easier oftentimes to go for somebody higher because they probably expect you to be coming for information. How did you get to where you're going? What advice do you have? How do you see the industry? Right. And then a couple other little sort of tricks here is one is somebody who's been promoted within their company. So if you're interested in working at a company, if you can find somebody who's been promoted at that company, that means that that company sees them as a very trusted and valued individual, right? So again, and this is LinkedIn is great for this. I mean, this is what LinkedIn is. It's a people search engine, right? So you can find these people. There's a tool called Sales Navigator within LinkedIn as well, which is not super expensive, but can do this even better. But yes, you can actually just go find people and then ideally active on LinkedIn, right? So most of these connections come through LinkedIn. It's just the de facto place that it tends to happen. There are others, but that's always a great place to start. So you also want to make sure they've been active on LinkedIn for the last 3 months because some people, they have LinkedIn accounts, but they never check it. So they may never see your connection. but targeting, right? So who do you want to talk with? That's the first piece. And then you have to reach out. And it's a very similar process, right? You have to connect, but in this step, you then have to thank them for the connection, right? You add a little more support and reinforcement here. So you thank them for the connection and you appreciate you taking the time, you engage with them, and ultimately you're trying to request a referral either to another person or to a job, right? And you can actually do this very effectively as you go through and you say, hey, I'd like to learn about your company. You have a conversation, you go through some emails. Thanks, this was super helpful. Based on all of your wonderful feedback, I've decided that this is a place that I want to work at. And I don't know if they have a referral program, but would you mind if I put your name down, or would you mind forwarding my resume on? And, oftentimes people will say yes, right? And that's really important these days to get that personal connection. And lastly, kind of close the loop, right? So same idea, but now you're doing it from cold. So what does it actually look like? So here's just two example messages that these are things that my clients have used. They both have kind of a 50% accept rate, which is very, very high. And we'll talk about rejection and that part of it in a minute. But this is actual message that the people have sent, totally cold, right? So the first one there is the short and sweet. So I am a, project manager at company X, and I'm looking to get to the next step in my career. I would love to connect with you so I can read your posts and better understand the work you're doing, right? You pick somebody who's obviously very successful and you send that kind of connect message. And right, have time to get back. Or you go even more specific, right? And example 2 is showing that you did the research, right? Hey, John, I hope you don't mind the cold outreach, but I came across something that you saw post about joining transformation. You've had a really impressive career, and I think there's a lot I could learn from you. Would you be open to a 15 to 20 minute chat so I could learn more from your experience? Specifically, I'd like to learn more about, again, showing you've done some research, personalizing it, and also love to hear about, in this case, the difference in your executive roles and what's been your secret to success. Thanks so much for considering it. Right? So these are just two examples of things that you can send to people that you've never met before. And in this case, excuse me, we've had about a 50% success rate on this, right? And it is a numbers game, and I'll go through that in a minute. But this is the kind of thing that you are capable of doing, right? You can network in the comfortable, warm world, but if you are interested in growing your career, the faster you go, try cold. It's a very powerful technique. It is mentally tough. Makes people a lot nervous, but it actually is very successful. And once you do it, it becomes natural and it's not a big deal. All right, so just a couple more things. So bonus tip, create a relationship chain. The first one is always the hardest. So this is the idea that getting a connection, particularly your first cold connection, is a milestone. If you can do that, one, you'll feel really good because you did it. But two, you can actually use that to get your next one, and then your next one, and then your next one. So think of it as a relationship chain. Every time you talk to somebody new, you want to ask, hey, is there another person that you think I should talk to? And I won't go through these all in detail, but these are just 5 little techniques that you can use to find a way to get to the next one. So first one is literally direct referral, right? This was great, found your insights, extremely valuable. Who else should I talk to learn more about this subject? And then you get a referral, and then that referral is no longer cold. You manage to turn what would have been a cold referral into a warm referral because you say, hi, Sally, I was talking to John, the so-and-so at company X, and he suggested I reach out to you to talk about this topic. Would you be open to a conversation? And if Sally and John have a relationship, it is now warm. You leverage John's deposits back to the bank account model. You leverage John's deposits to Sally, and he's letting you take a little bit of withdrawal on his behalf, and then you get the conversation, right? And the other ones, complement and pivot, shared interest, offer value first, follow meeting. These are all different ways to say the same thing, which is, this was great. Can I basically get another conversation and keep the chain going? Okay, so just another couple, because I know we're going to come up on time in a minute. I want to talk just for a minute about rejection, because this is, again, mentally one of the most important pieces of networking in a career perspective and career growth. It is an obstacle, but it is not just an obstacle. It is a necessary step. And I tell you that as a career coach, is that you need to get comfortable with rejection. And rejection does not mean you are a bad person. If you reach out to somebody and they say, either no thank you or they ghost you, that is not a reflection on you. It could be they're busy. It could be they didn't check it. There could be a million reasons that have nothing to do with you. And so 2 reasons why I would highly recommend that you build this comfort with rejection. So the first thing is it does build resilience, right? It is an opportunity to learn. You'll figure out, okay, this path didn't work. Maybe I'm going to try something else. It enhances your adaptability and encourages persistent, all of which are traits that you guys know because as program and project managers, like these are all things you need to do, right? It's not easy to get all that stuff done, and you need to be adaptable. You need to be persistent, and it just continues to build that skill, right? So you increase your resilience if you're comfortable going out and networking, knowing that it's not going to be 100% successful. And the reason number 2 is because you need it to find great opportunities. Not every opportunity is obvious. The best roles are the ones that are created based on connection that you made, based on the skills you brought, based on your understanding of the problem. There are actually jobs that basically are created out of thin air because of the connections and the relationships there, right? And so, yes, job postings exist, but that's not the best way to get the role. The best way to get the role is to have the network, because then you find the idea before it's even a job posting. You find the start of the project, you find the start of the funding, and they need somebody who can deliver it. And somebody who knows you, and you can get in there. It then, it helps kind of refine your approach as you go through these. You try it and then you refine, and kind of proves your commitment. And this idea of persistence is something that people really appreciate. And just as a side anecdote, right? So I spent my career in technology. Now I run my own business. I'm, executive coach. It's been wonderful, but I've had to learn about sales and marketing and all this kind of stuff because since I'm the company, if I don't have clients, I don't get any income, right? People appreciate the persistence. So I reach out to people and say, hey, where are you in your career? Would you be interested in chatting? And I usually do that 2 or 3 times. And typically, and this is true of all sales and marketing, is it's actually the second or the third or even the fourth or the fifth contact that people engage, right? So that persistence muscle is very important. So I'd encourage you to try these things. Rejection is not a bad thing. So again, that is one of the core messages I want to make. Rejection and your ability to handle rejection, the stronger that is, the farther you're going to go, the more impact you're going to have. Cool. All right. So that's mostly it. I want to give you a quick recap, and then I guess we'll kind of move over to Q&A because that's about 40 minutes. So here's the recap, right? So the idea, if you're going to look through all this, I gave you a lot of different ideas, but let's kind of boil it down. Here are the 3 steps and what you want to build on. So the first thing is make it specific. You need to be targeting. You should look for people in jobs you want, 2+ levels above. Why would they want to talk to you? Oftentimes, making people feel good is a good enough reason. Hey, I see you are this amazing executive who did these amazing things. I would like to be like you. That in itself is a deposit, and often enough for them to go, oh, you think I'm awesome? Sure, I'll talk to you. It's a natural human reaction. So target, make it specific, and go find out about the jobs you want, right? That's kind of step number 1. Outreach, try to make it easy, right? Why do you want them? Not, dear sir or madam, I see you're an executive that has an important role. I would like to talk to you, right? Be specific. Why them? Make it personal. Make the first ask has to be little because you're asking for a withdrawal. So you don't want to say, hey, would you hire me? That is a huge withdrawal because I'm putting lots of time and energy and money. So you have to say, can I get 15 minutes? If they say, sorry, I'm really busy, say, no worries. Thank you for answering. How about if I email you a question or 2? Would that be okay? Right? You want to get it as small as possible. Your goal is to make a deposit. It doesn't have to be a big one, but it has to be, it's a 0 to 1 situation. You want to make a deposit, right? And number 3, conversation, make it continue, right? So specific, what do you want? Make it as easy as possible to connect, and then make it continue by asking good questions, see if you can get a follow-up, and ask somebody else if they can recommend you somebody to talk to. So that's the idea. Overall, I hope I kind of, conveyed the fact that career growth is fundamentally about solving a problem. And part of solving that problem is the ability to find the problem, get to there and have people recommend you as the solution. And that's the fundamental value of career networking. And I hope you kind of take some of these things, pick one thing and try it out, right? You don't have to do all this stuff, but pick one. And if you're up for it, try the cold networking. It's a very powerful technique. If you can get it done, you will feel like your world just expanded. So that'll be my recommendation. But thank you again for the time today. And I guess we'll open it up to Q&A.
Great. Thank you. I think, Drew, Saur, I think that was really a fantastic and a very short and precise, but very impactful. Okay, the advice is what you put through in the form of context, in the form of why, in the form of how, and then apparently, as you keep mentioning about throughout your presentation, is about the deposits. I really appreciate that you mentioned that a couple of times, because the deposits are something I understand that way is more of a kind of currency of the trust element which you are putting it through. Now, if we see ourselves in the context of deposits, is that, for example, I would like to share one small experience about deposit. Uh, I had this guy who has been following up with me, okay, around. He was been the engineering graduate, okay, recently, and then out of the university, still doing the internship, but he was trying to ask me the fundamental questions around what kind of education he is pursuing. Is it correct for the industry, for example?
Mhm.
Okay. Initially, of course, as you said, I was not quite giving him the time, but his persistence made me to start responding to him in the elementary messages over the LinkedIn initially, and then of course he reached out to me the into the email, and then from email he reached out to me to the phone number. Okay, apparently I remember that I spent it and invested more than 2 hours with him, guiding him around. The same questions what he asked me 1 year ago. Okay, but totally in the virtual session in the
Yeah.
2 hours. And that was something I can tell you that on the other side of the table, when he was trying to reach me out, he was not offering me any kind of help. Actually, he was not trying to ask me that, can you give me a job? He was not trying to tell me that uh, something that I can help him out in the form of internship or to get his experience. Nothing of that. But he was making these small currency deposits with me. And that made me to think that, hey, why not see that what's going on the perspective with this individual, and let me spend some time to give him the coaching a bit offline, nothing, no revenue or nothing work in it, but just out of the curiosity, I made that. So I think really fantastic one. We have a couple of questions. Of course, I invite audience to bring with more. We have a couple of minutes at the moment to start with. First one, I would like in the chronological order is that how do you see career networking in the face of remote working? Very relevant. Of course, now things have changed dynamically, and some jobs are coming back to the hybrid, some back to the jobs into the full time. But remote is the concept which has introduced after pandemic full fledged. How do you see this career networking in this light?
So I'd say, I mean, that's a great question. And the reality is that it's just as important, but you need to work harder, right? Because if you're in the office, there are much more natural ways that you'll see someone in the hallway. Again, if you think of this deposit analogy, every time you see somebody, hey, let's catch some coffee, let's catch up. There's a lot of easier ways to do it.
Mm.
And so if you're remote, it doesn't happen organically. And so you need to think about it as a strategy. And I recommend, even if you're in the office, I always recommend thinking about this as a strategy. But if you're remote, people get busy. 3 months can go by. You know what? I haven't talked to anybody except those people I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, right? And there's something, it's the classic 80-20 rule. And you should find 20% of your time ideally should be thinking about bigger picture items, the bigger project strategies, but also your career and your networking. And so I always recommend people take, an hour a week, right? A couple hours a month, and do this active sort of reach out. And for remote, like Zoom is fine, right? There is a huge difference between text and email, Zoom and in person. But like Zoom and face to face is 10x better than sort of email and text, and then in person is probably another 2x on top of that. But getting that facial integration is very valuable. So that's kind of my recommendation is If you try to network, just grab a quick Zoom with somebody. Hey, I want to catch up 15 minutes and do it this way. Same exact stuff, but it becomes more important because you lose the organic opportunities.
100%. In fact, my point of view is that as you said, the cold networking aspect which you were mentioning, for me personally, it has been much more easier in the remote work because again, as you said, being an introvert, it's being a very, very difficult step for me to reach to the person in physical presence, thinking that I'm breaching around that proximity layer of two level up and reaching them out. But in the remote, it was much more liberal of the thoughts which come to through that putting a context, at least we get the message out through that. So the perspective is yeah, but I think thank you for the answer. Next one is an Ashraf. How reliability and trustworthiness can be ensured from others unless there is a unless there is isn't a common interest. Okay, so basically the question is that if there is no common interest and you're trying to network, okay, you get that there's no common interest there, so how reliability and trustworthiness can be ensured from others in this case?
Yeah, and I would sort of challenge that a little bit because I think there's always a common interest, right? And this is one of those things that you this is a different technique where you kind of like move up the value chain until you find the common interest, right? And so let's take within a company because it's a little easier to understand. If you're on my project team, we have a common interest. But if I work in division A and you work in this global division B that has nothing to do with my division, and why is the connection? Well, are we in the same business year? Eventually we both want the company to succeed, right? You know, eventually there's something that you guys agree on, and it could be, and you just look at their LinkedIn profile. It could be personal. Oh, they like sports. Okay, I like sports. That's great. They live in my country. Like, we're trying to do this. The idea is there is always a common interest, and that's the task, right? The task is to finding the commonality. And sometimes it's hard, right? Because you're right. If there is truly no common interest, there's no aligned incentives. One, I would suggest it's not a great career network opportunity because there is no common interest. So your challenge is find the common interest. And I have yet to find a scenario where there literally is none. I mean, you can, some very extreme ones, but it's probably there, and that's your job because you're the one trying to make the deposit. You're trying the one advancing your career. Go first and see if you can find it.
Thank you. Madhu is asking that can you explain some ways to overcome the fear of rejection or awkwardness when networking?
And I mean, it is one of those things that just almost like close your eyes and do it. And this is where Anshul, your point about remote, this is actually where remote becomes much easier
Yeah.
because I can get on LinkedIn and I can send 10, 50, 100 connect messages, right? And the thing I would tell you is there is zero downside, right? If you send somebody a connect message and they ignore you, well, you didn't have a connection with them before. You don't have a connection with them now. Like there's zero downside. And this is why I say this is a very mentally hard one. And so my recommendation is pick a number, and it probably needs to be like 20 or more, right? 20, 30, 40, and you can go up from there. And just use this, like you saw some of the examples in there, use that message and send 20 connects because it is like a sales marketing game. So it is going to be small. 5%, 10% are going to respond. But if you do 20, you should get 1, 2, 3, or 4. And as long as you get one, okay, 20 to 1. Okay, it's not great, but it's one. So then if you did another 20, you get 2. So just do the first 20. Don't judge yourself. Don't worry about it. Craft the message, take an hour, and just fire out 20 connection requests. Because once you get one, you'll start to believe, right? So that would be my recommendation there.
Okay, so be optimistic. And then again, as the marketing example Dre was giving, okay, but yeah, I mean, the word of caution is that, of course, try to focus on quality. Okay, it's just not about the number that how many you are sending and how many you are getting rejections or how many you are getting acceptance. Just not about mathematics all the time. It's about the quality because if you just focus on the quality, as you were saying, even the one is 100 times better than having 20, which is doing nothing to you. You know, so that's the word of caution there.
Just Anshul, just to add to that real quick is for again, thinking in the PMI context, like you need to treat it like a project or a system, right? This idea of, okay, it's networking, it's personal, it's my brand, I'm going to get all nervous. If you can, just it's a system. right? And it has inputs and it has outputs. And you try inputs. And if those inputs don't work, you need to change the input. Like if you can adopt that mindset around your network and just take your personal out, again, in the beginning, it can make it much easier. So that's another thing to try.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions now pouring in, I think the people are getting much more drew around that. But what stage of our career should we get going with serious networking? Oh my, this is Ajita Nair. So is there any stage specifically where we should start thinking networking? Is that something? Or
Well,
person?
so it's I think as you saw from the graph, it becomes more important the higher up you go, right? So if you're kind of in that, okay, I'd say senior project manager, program, like if you're in that middle stage, that's absolutely when you should start because it's required up here. And what we're all seeing is it takes time and energy to build the skill, right? So my recommendation is start today because like all these questions, it's going to be awkward, it's going to be weird, it's going to be hard. So start today because today is the least important time to network. As you grow your career, it's going to be more and more important. So you're going to make mistakes. It's fine. Like that's the deal. That's learning. So start now. And I guarantee you, this is the easiest time to do it because it becomes more important the higher up you go. So now would be my suggestion.
Thank you. This one, fundamental one, and definitely I would like to pick this up. Introverts, okay? Some cold networking tips for the introverts, and there are many, not few.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I would say that the two things I would say for introverts are they're kind of two paths to go. One is get really good at warm, right? So if you're a true introvert and you're like, I really have problems going out and doing cold, and I just have difficulty doing it. Warm is much easier for people, and you can really get good at warm first, and then you'll be like, well, I have this, and then you can tiptoe into the cold. The cold is find one thing that you add value, like where you have value or where you want to go. So the two angles are I want to be you someday. All you're doing is asking questions. You're an interviewer. You are a journalist. You are somebody who's just going to find out what are the key challenges of this industry? What are these kind of things? And so you can be the interviewer, right? So then it's not about me anymore, right? I'm gonna, hey, Anshul, you're leading this webinar. I'd love to talk. How did you get? Why are you here? What are you doing? It's not about me anymore. We're not going to talk about Drew at all. We're going to talk about Anshul only. And so for an introvert, that's often the easiest way to do it because it's not about you anymore. Like you're literally interviewing, and that might help because then again, you don't have to think about yourself. You're just going to get information from somebody who has expertise.
Okay, perfect, perfect. We have, can we take more? We have some, okay. Ala is asking that when targeting senior level professionals, 2+ levels above us, how do we identify and communicate unique value proposition that not only resonate with them, but also creating lasting and mutually beneficial relationship? A very thought-provoking, deep question. Okay, I think I don't know how much deep we can go in the answer, Drew.
Yeah, and so what I would say is that is I'd say a higher level maturity
Yeah.
answer. So the higher up you go, the harder it is to connect your value to this. So if you're applying for this job, you have your value, connect, and that's exactly what you're trying to do. The higher up you go, if I'm a project manager and there's a CEO of a 100,000 person company, it is going to be very hard to get the CEO to see the unique value in a way that affects their day job. Like that's just not what they do. So when you go to two or three, you want to show them that you are a thoughtful, good question asker, persistent, good communicator, respectful, all those kind of things. Like you are trying to demonstrate that you have the core soft qualities of someone who is up and coming, right? So that's the value proposition. It's not, hey, I can run your project for you. That's not what they do. They have people to do that for them. So the best value proposition you can have with them is this is somebody to keep an eye on. So do you display the traits of, thoughtful, good questions, persistent, follow up, trustworthy, reliable? Those soft qualities are the best way to make an impression on somebody at that level.
Oh, great. I think that's also answered the question from Mr. Ahmed. He was also asking the similar one, that how to go and defining the value possibly through your senior executive. So I think we have answered that one with this one as well. I think the last one I would like to take because of the matter of the time. Uh, Is this what should be? Okay. Can you tell us some tips to diversify my network to include people from different industries or fields? The person is from healthcare domain, Madhu, but the idea is that how can we do the diversification in our networking from the different industry and fields?
Yeah. And you'll see a theme in my answer, right? It all comes back to the connection, right? And so the question is, how can I connect my industry with your industry? And so if it's
Mm,
healthcare, the example, data protection is huge in healthcare. Regulation is huge in healthcare. That's an immediate opening to anybody in finance, right? It's an immediate connection to people in cybersecurity. It's immediate connection to, all that kinds of things, right? And pick a technology, AI. So how does AI affect healthcare? Well, how does AI affect retail? How does AI affect telecom? How does AI affect farming? Right?
mm,
You find a thing that happens in your industry that is also happening in the other industry, and that's the line you say, hey, you're also doing this kind of thing. Let's chat.
mm. Yeah, I think yeah, absolutely correct. Means this one, I personally have done it. For example, I was talking to somebody who is in agriculture. Okay. Now, I have been never been to farming. Okay. I never been understanding that how the farming is being really getting changed over the period of time and how the emphasis on the weather is really contributing to their strategies. But again, the common denominator is something that we need to really underscore that how what you are thinking in your field. Now, you could be totally different guy, okay, doing totally different thing. But actually, there is something which is common. For example, is that the risk. I'm just giving example. Okay, you handle the risk in your areas, they handle the risk in their areas. Now, how do you
Mhm.
quantify the risk? That's the common denominator underscoring for me to ask some question that do you understand the impact of risk management in farming? And how has it changed over the period of years? That's a simple answer. I just try to share that opinion. But yeah, thank you so much, Rio. I think we have been doing a bit of far over there. The last question I would like, don't have to do injustice to that. Uh, Again, the thing is that the time management, the one question is around that. We are too busy in our work, leaves very little time for all of us to do that. But as you give one important tips is that bring out 1 hour in your week, giving it thinking time. Okay,
Yeah.
that how many opportunities for engaging in the team building week, there are not many opportunities we do, how we overcome this challenge of networking at work, because everybody is busy in their own core work. We don't get time to do the networking at that way. But how do you do
Yeah.
suggest?
So two things here. One is deposits can be email only. Like, so again, if time crunch, you can always be like, hey, saw you did this, great job, catch up soon. That's a deposit, right? So you can always do that, right? So there are always ways you can do it that don't require time. So think about that. And two, my recommendation is we set an hour a week, hour a month, make it two ingredients. Make it so small that you would be embarrassed not to do it. 5 minutes a month. Could you spend 5 minutes a month reaching out to new people? And hopefully you'll be like, okay, that's embarrassing if I can't find 5 minutes a month. So make it as small as necessary. And if you did
Mhm.
5 minutes this month, you do 10 minutes next month. And then tell somebody else. Find a partner in this and say, okay, I'm going to commit an hour a month, right? And hey, Anshal, can you help me here? I'm going to check in with you next month. I'm going to do at least an hour and hopefully let's partner. Are you going to do this? Let's do this. Like get a partner. And I guarantee you will find it because once you do it, you get good ideas, you get good insights. It'll make you better at your job and it becomes a necessary thing. So right now, I'll just tell you where I am in my career. If I don't network, I feel nervous, right? Because I'm missing out on opportunities that I, as an executive, am supposed to be finding. So eventually it flips where you actually feel bad if you don't do it, as opposed to, oh, I got to find time to do it. So that's
Mm,
eventually where you want to get to. But
mm.
minimum commitment, find a partner and do something. That's my 2 cents there.
Wonderful. I think really enjoyed. I think just look like continue the discussions as a very deeper topic. Of course, we all connect with it very easily. My key takeaways have been your context, short deposits, okay, and then put the quality through it, and then find the timing to get it through in the form of small investment in your understanding and taking this endeavors to the long-term objectives which you want to grow it. Thank you so much, Rio. I think it has been fantastic to learn from you and to share some kind of good thoughts around networking. I think I would like to definitely give a big shout out to the friends at marketing team. who've been doing the great job around posting this information about social media and our event page in the website. Before we close our webinar tonight, I would like to thank to all the lovely audience, and the questions what they've been putting through really made us think throughout. And then please feel free to reach out to the Drew. Of course, there's a presentation he has shared, but of course you can go through the recording back into YouTube channel as well for PMI UAE. And then of course, I would say good night, and thank you so much for the rest of the teams from outreach, governance, and finance team for making these webinars as successful with all of us, and the colleagues behind the scene from Ankur, Joyce, and rest of the Amir from the event team. This is Anshul wishing you a lovely evening ahead and the rest of the time going ahead. Thank you so much and God bless. Thank you, Drew. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.